Hi guys, it's Norman Sullivan from Harrigan Lifestyle here. I hope you're all staying safe out there. It's time for us to embark on the first project on the new Jimny. And it's going to be an exciting one. It's one that I've wanted to do for a long time. You see, one of the things that I've always wanted on a vehicle was a rooftop tent. And frankly, when I got rid of the Land Rover Defender a couple of years ago and downsized to a Jimny, I honestly thought that my opportunity to own a rooftop tent had gone. Then I did a bit of research and I watched some videos and some different bits on the internet, and I discovered that Front Runner outfitters do both a lightweight rack and lightweight roof tent that I thought would probably do the job. So, yesterday we had an exciting delivery. Pallet truck arrived and we have taken delivery of a Front Runner roof rack, ladder and roof tent, and all of the gear and the fittings to fit it on the new truck. The equipment arrived direct to me from Front Runner on a pallet, and within 48 hours of me placing the order. The 4 boxes contain the tent itself, the roof rack, a ladder, and the various different fitments to fit it to the truck. There were a number of reasons why I went with Front Runner equipment, but a key consideration for me was weight. The Jimny has a very limited dynamic roof loading, and the Front Runner gear is some of the lightest on the market, with the roof rack weighing only 26 kilograms and the roof tent an incredible 43 kilograms. That's considerably lighter than any similar product on the market. Okay, so the first box we want to have a look at is the Front Runner rack. Let's get in there. So we've unboxed the rack, and what have we got in there? We've got 6 standard slats, 2 combined slats, we've got a couple of boxes with hardware, we've got an angled profile which is wind deflector, and we've got a set of instructions, and we've also got some stickers should we wish to advertise the Front Runner products. The first bits we're looking for are the side profiles. Now they come in this packaging here. In some of the larger racks we have to join these together. But the Jimny rack's a relatively small one, so no joining required. So you can see when I've unpackaged those, they've come as a pair. I've also put some cardboard down in the ground here. I wouldn't want that lovely finish to get damaged on my concrete floor. The next piece that we're going to need is the combined slat. And we've just got to check that the nylock nuts that are inserted in the factory are still in the holes. Sometimes they can get dislodged in shipping, and if that's the case, it's just a case of finding them and popping them back in the hole. We start assembly by connecting the side profile to the combined slat. And the way that we do that, we turn the combined slat upside down, find the locating hole in the end, and then with one of the M8 button head screws, we're going to carefully connect the profiles together and loosely tighten up that screw hole using a 5mm hex head wrench, an Allen key. And that's a close-up on that connection that we just made. That's the hex head bolt, loosely joining the side rail to the front. I'm now going to repeat that for the other side, fitting the other side rail loosely and again securing in place with one of these hex head bolts, but keeping it nice and loose, because the next thing we're going to do then is to begin to slide the slats in to form the rack. Holes all line up, no problem. Good, okay. Okay, so we're now going to take the first of the standard slats. First thing again we want to do, quickly make sure that the nylock bolts have remained in place. If they've become dislodged, just pop them back in. We're going to turn that upside down so the bolts are on the bottom, and we're going to slide that in between the two guide rails, the side rails, and we're going to loosely bolt it into the third hole down each side. So leaving a gap between each of the different slats. We'll do that now. Make sure those holes line up on either side. And again, a couple of these button head bolts to hold that loosely in place. Again, we're not going to over tighten those just now. We want a bit of movement in the rack so we can slide the remaining slats in. And we're now going to repeat that process for the remaining slats. Checking the nylon nuts are in place, sliding them in to every second hole and loosely tightening them in. All of the standard slats are now fitted as required. Last job is to fit the second combined slat, just exactly the same way as we did the one at the front. Having completed assembly of the rack, the next thing we can do now is to tighten up all the bolts. And the recommended torque setting, 20 Newton meters. So make sure you're using your torque wrench and you've got it set right. Okay, we've torqued that up to 20 Newton meters all around. Just be careful when you're tightening the heads. Because of the thick anodizing on the bolt heads, it's very, very easy for your Allen head fitment to slip out. So just be careful when you're doing that. It would be dead easy to scratch the finish. And you wouldn't want to do that because it's a really lovely anodized finish on there. We're now going to fit the corner pieces that come in this little box, and we need to flip the rack the right way up to do that. The corner pieces just slide in and are held in place with an M6 button-headed bolt. Make sure you get the name the right way up. Front Runner. And repeat for all four corners. Okay, so that's our rack largely assembled. The final job is to fit the wind deflector on the leading edge. I've laid out the two pieces of the wind deflector on the bench just so you can see what happens next. Because what we need to do is we need to take one of the bolts, the special washer, and a nut, and we're going to pass it through each of the holes on the outside ends of the wind deflector here. So we're going to pass them through and then just hand tighten on both ends. At this point, it's worth highlighting that the instructions are slightly confusing in that diagram 8.3 shows you the correct order for the bolt, the washer and the nut, but it contradicts for me the written instruction above it that says make sure that the washer is above the T-slot channel, because technically the washer is below the T-slot channel because effectively the rack is currently upside down, and it might be better to say outside the T-slot channel to avoid any confusion. Let's assemble that now. Okay, so here is our bolt, then the washer, and then the nut. And we're going to slide it into the channel via that hole there. And give it a bit of a wiggle. And slide it along in the channel like that. The inside, because it's a slotted end, all we've got to do is to take our bolt and again slide that in the channel and along, and then we can lift that up. And we can slide the two together. And we'll repeat that on the other side. Okay, so that's both of the wind deflectors slid into place. All I want to do now is just measure, find the middle of the rack and get them lined up so that I can get them tightened up. And the instructions do say that after you've tried it on the car, you might need to adjust these a little bit just to ensure that you minimize the wind noise. Well, that's the rack completed, including the front wind deflectors. Now it's time to move on to the components that we need to actually fit the rack onto the Jimny. We've now carefully set the rack aside and we're going to have a look at the rack installation equipment. In this box we've got 3 pairs of legs. The Class C is a number 2 leg, 130 millimeters, so 3 pairs of those. This we can set aside just now. That's the tent mounting kit, so we can put that out of the way. And also in this box is another set of wind deflectors. I'm not sure if that's a mistake or not, but we'll find out. Each of our leg kits contains the 2 main pieces required to clamp a leg onto the car, and some nuts and bolts and fixings, plus of course the instructions. Very nicely machined and finished pieces, I have to say, and very, very solid. Fitting the legs is easy, it's just a case of deciding which slat they're going to fit onto. Sliding the bolts into the end. Fitting the leg onto the bolts and gently holding in place with a washer and a nylock nut. Front Runner say don't space the legs more than 3 slats apart. Now I have 3 pairs of legs and I want to put my roof tent on at the rear of the vehicle, so there is no slat right in the middle, so I've chosen to put my middle leg 1 slat further back. That way obviously I'm going to have more support on the rack at the back of the vehicle, which is where the weight from the tent is going to be. I'll loosely tighten that up just now, but obviously we want enough slack to be maintained in there so that it can slide backwards and forwards for fitting it on the vehicle. So those 3 pairs of feet have now been loosely attached to the rack. I've now taken the rack outside because I want to see how the tent is going to look on it before we actually put it on the roof rack. Obviously it's much easier to do this now while the rack's still on the ground before it's lifted onto the roof of the vehicle. So I got my wife Sheena to give me a hand just to lift the rack out. All we were really anxious to see here is how it looked on the roof rack. And at this stage I was still evaluating whether or not it would open over the rear or side of the vehicle. If you're interested in seeing more about the fitting of the Front Runner roof tent and its operation, then you can look at some of my future videos on this subject. Okay, so we couldn't put off fitting the rack to the vehicle any longer. So again, Sheena gave me a hand and we very carefully lifted it onto the top of the car, remembering that at this stage the feet are still loose. We, as we would say in Scotland, shuggled it about a bit, just to make sure that it was seated nicely in the gutter. And then it was just a case of moving it backwards and forwards to the position that just seemed to look right for the car. looking right. Making sure the brackets are all square, and now that the brackets are all square, I'm going to tighten up the bolts all around. Okay, that's the bolts on the legs tightened. The next thing to do now is to fit the clamps. Clamping the rack on simply involves hooking the lower piece of the leg around the rain gutter and then securing with a bolt, locking washer and standard washer. And that's the rack tightened up all around. Looking good. Now that the rack is on and secured, the next thing I want to do is a road test to see how the noise is, to see how the handling is, and also to understand if we need to adjust the wind deflectors in any way to reduce any wind noise. That's us up to 60 miles an hour. No impact on handling whatsoever. And absolutely no difference in noise that I can tell. It's pretty impressive actually. I was certain that there would be excess noise. Some people have reported a whistle. Nothing there at all. No adjustment required. Really successful test. Front Runner roof rack. I love it already. I'd like to thank Front Runner for supplying the UK specification Slimline II rack that we've reviewed in this video. This rack has an installed weight of approximately 27 kilograms and the key dimensions are a length of 1,560mm and a width of 1,345mm. The rack is constructed from black epoxy powder coated T6 aluminium 3CR12 stainless steel. And if it wasn't already obvious from my review, I think it's a great piece of kit. In my next video we will be fitting the Front Runner roof tent to the rack and we will be reviewing that. So looking forward to doing that and seeing you in the very near future. Stay safe guys, and if you're enjoying the videos please do like them and please do follow my channel. It makes it worthwhile for me.